Hello, you're watching The Interview on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Now, our guest today is Simon Coveney, Foreign Minister of Ireland, joining us from the Irish Embassy here in Paris. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Coveney.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we have to be apart, of course, because of the coronavirus restrictions, something that we might well touch on in this interview. Now, your country, just for our viewers, very much at the heart of the as-yet unresolved Brexit negotiations, facing the prospect of a no-deal scenario in the middle of a pandemic. Meanwhile, Ireland is also preparing to take a seat at the United Nations Security Council as of January 1st, giving it a bigger voice on the world stage. So, Mr. Coveney, when you and I last spoke, you said you were hopeful for a Brexit deal by early November. That was a month ago. At what point do you think do we say, actually now it really is just too late and we have to accept that there's no formal arrangements between the UK and the EU on January 1st?
Well, I think we're getting very close to that point, and I think everybody, even those in the negotiating rooms now in London, are saying that this has to be resolved within days. It's no longer a question of weeks, because even if we get an agreement in the next few days, the time is very, very short to ratify that agreement before the end of the year and to put all the preparations in place for that. So we really are at the very end of 4.5 years of negotiation. I think all of the focus now is it possible to bridge the remaining gaps? We know what they are. It's fisheries, which is a very emotive and very political and very difficult issue to resolve. And it's ensuring that there is a level playing field or fair competition between the EU and the UK in the future as a platform for tariff-free trade. And of course, to have a governance model in place that can deal with disputes in a robust way in the future to reassure both sides. So they're the two areas where we still have to find accommodation for each other, and I think there's a huge effort going on right now to try and do that.
Well, indeed, on one of those particular sticking points that you mentioned, fisheries and fishing, it really impacts just a handful of EU countries, including Ireland and France, of course. But given the high stakes of a no-deal Brexit for every single member state of the EU and the UK, should the EU perhaps be looking at just making a pragmatic compromise on fisheries and giving London a bit more of what it wants?
Well, we are trying to agree a pragmatic compromise, but you could make the exact same argument for the UK. You know, the British side has decided to make fishing a big political issue because of the language around Brexit of taking back control, reinforcing sovereignty. Nobody is questioning British sovereignty here. The issue from an EU perspective is that if the UK is to be facilitated by the EU in many areas to access EU markets, whether that's the EU energy market, whether it's aviation, whether it's road haulage, whether it's services, whether it's financial services, whether it's data and data security, all these areas, the UK wants to be able to access EU markets tariff-free and barrier-free. And the EU is saying, well, yes, we can facilitate a lot of that, but we also want to try and look after our fishing interests, our coastal communities, who have for many, many decades been fishing some of their stocks in British waters. And we want to be able to do a sensible deal in that space. And so I think it's important to say that the EU is not going to abandon fishing interests in an effort to get an agreement for other sectors. I think that would be unfair. And I don't believe that will happen. But it is difficult because the starting position of both sides is so far apart that trying to bridge that gap is not an easy political compromise to strike between the two sides, and that's why it's taken so long. And of course, it may not be possible at all. And if it's not possible to get an agreement, well, then we have a real problem.
Well, indeed, we are hearing that some member states would actually prefer to just have no deal, for them something a bit more clear-cut, rather than a deal that goes too far in making compromises, for example, on those fishing communities you mentioned. Do you share that position?
Well, certainly, I don't want a no deal, but I mean, we have made our position clear that we won't strike a deal at any cost. And to be honest with you, I trust Michel Barnier and his task force They've done an incredible job over the last 4.5 years. They've shown patience, they've shown respect to the UK, but they've also shown real firmness and toughness to protect EU interests, to protect the integrity of the EU single market, to resolve a very complex issue on the island of Ireland, which was hugely important from an Irish perspective in terms of protecting a peace process. And now that same negotiating team is trying to finalise a future relationship agreement. And I have to say, I trust Michel Barnier to make those judgment calls in terms of what level of compromise is acceptable and what level of compromise is simply too much and too far. And we will find out, I think, within the next few days whether it's possible to get a compromise that both sides can live with to allow the UK and the EU to move forward on the basis of a positive partnership. Because I think the absence of an agreement is going to result in a blame game, a lot of political tension, and huge uncertainty and disruption and cost for economies and societies that really can't afford that right now in the context of the pressures that they've already suffered this year because of COVID.
And just obviously businesses are trying to plan what's going to happen. Are you able to say what is going to happen for anyone trying to, say, bring goods between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland in either direction from January the 1st onwards?
Oh, well, I mean, the Irish and Northern Irish question is already solved for the most part by the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, which is part of the existing withdrawal treaty. So don't forget, we already have a withdrawal treaty agreed. It's now international law that requires both sides to implement that protocol and that withdrawal treaty.
But it's a protocol that the British government said that they could be prepared to breach in specific and limited circumstances.
Well, I mean, you know, if they do that, they are breaching international law, and that has consequences. And I believe the EU will take legal action if that materialises, and I certainly hope it won't. And of course, the British government is now saying that they may reintroduce legislation to the House of Commons next week, which effectively doubles down on that previous commitment to introduce legislation that would potentially be in breach of the withdrawal agreement. And if they do that next week, I think that is a signal essentially to the EU that they don't want a future relationship agreement. So I hope it doesn't happen. But look, I think we could waste a lot of time talking about domestic British legislation. Really, where we need to focus all of our efforts now is finding a way to get a compromise agreement through negotiation that actually makes that legislation irrelevant, which is, I think, where the negotiating teams are at right now, and which is why they worked practically through the night last night, trying to find a way forward on fisheries and on fair competition.
All right, I'd like to move on to, of course, the other massive headline for all of us, really, the pandemic. The United Kingdom has become the first country to validate the use of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, not yet authorised for use in the rest of Europe. How long do you expect people in Ireland will have to wait to get this vaccine?
Well, I hope not too long. You know, I think we're certainly hoping to be making vaccine available in the month of January. So, you know, my expectation is that the EU will be a number of weeks behind the UK in terms of the approval process, and you know, the EU, of course, needs to follow all of the procedures that are necessary to provide the reassurance to the public that everything has been done as it should. But I don't expect that we're going to have a significant delay. And I think what we'll see before the end of this month or early in the new year is the certification of not just one vaccine, but a number of vaccines. And of course, what the European Union has done is it has pre-purchased huge volumes of vaccine from multiple suppliers to ensure that all of the EU member states get enough vaccine to meet demand of their populations. And this is, of course, one of the big advantages of EU membership for a small country like Ireland, but many others as well. So I look forward to moving into the space of vaccine application, and hopefully this is the start of the end of this global pandemic in terms of how it's impacted in such a negative and such a tragic way in so many countries across the European Union.
And not to talk about the UK too much, but of course it was the first country to validate use of this vaccine. And the health minister there suggested incorrectly that this was quicker in the UK because of Brexit. That's been disproven to be the case. However, the UK used emergency law provisions that other EU member states could also use. Is that an option in Ireland? You say that you would like to get that vaccine out to people more quickly. Could you perhaps go for that emergency law provision?
No, we'll be doing through this. We'll be doing this through the EU systems, and of course, we've seen people trying to justify the policy of Brexit and using the approval of a vaccine in the UK as the upside of Brexit, and that has been, when you look at the facts and the legalities of it, of course, that's not true. But look, it's just another reminder of a lot of the commentary around Brexit and the unreliability of that information. But look, to be honest with you, the UK makes decisions for the UK. We respect that. We wish them well in terms of the application and the availability of vaccine in the UK, and of course that involves Northern Ireland as well, and that is very, very welcome. But we will be making our decisions through the EU collective system, and we trust those systems to protect our consumers and also to make timely decisions around approval, which we expect, as I say, in the next few weeks.
Simon Coveney, Irish Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Anytime.
Thanks to you as well for watching the interview. Hope to see you soon on France 24.